column?
Uncle Matt, can I ask you something?
Sure.
What do you think will happen to Dr. Rossi?
Well, your mother told you about the hearing.
No, well, she didn't exactly volunteer the information. I could tell something was wrong. I can't tell, you know.
I didn't say you couldn't. But I don't know what's going to happen to Dr. Rossi. I haven't heard the facts yet.
Well, that's an awfully official answer, isn't it? He's your friend.
It's the only answer I can give.
You must feel something.
Of course I do.
Well, then. Honestly, this whole town operates on a conspiracy. Everyone's life is changing, and no one will admit it.
That's not true.
Isn't it? Your friend's in trouble, and you talk about the facts. Mother's in love, and she tries to hide it. From me. Rodney's whole life is changing, and he acts as if nothing's happened.
You have your column?
No, I didn't write it. Well, I just didn't feel like writing teen topics.
And what am I supposed to put in that space? An announcement that your life is changing? Come here. Now look at this.
Hmm?
See the date?
July 12th, 1792.
And that's a lot of years ago. And a lot of writers, and a lot of editors, and a lot of crises. And I doubt if they always felt like writing what they had to write.
You're furious at me, aren't you? I can tell because you're not shouting. I guess that's the good part of the conspiracy. The Observer notes. I'll bet if we look back in the archives, we'd find out the Observer was a woman. A young woman.
What makes you so sure?
People grew up faster in those days. They loved more intensely.
Well, what makes you so sure the Observer was a woman?
Female intuition. Women are more observant. And I am too old for teen topics, Uncle Matt.
And you'd like to revive the Observer?
Could I?
Don't ever miss a deadline again.
No, I won't. I promise. And that's a serious promise.
Good morning, Miss Parks.
Hello, Dr. Rossi. The meeting's in the conference room.
Where is that?
I'll show you. You're a little early.
Thank you, Miss Parks. Well, where do I sit here?
Well, I don't know. Here, I guess.
Oh.
Would you like some coffee?
Well, no, thank you. Well, I don't want to keep you from your work, Miss Parks.
Oh, that's all right, Dr. Rossi.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Harrington. Would you like some coffee, Mr. Harrington?
No, thank you, Miss Parks.
Excuse me.
Well, Mr. Harrington, how are the boys?
Nothing.
This must be a difficult time for them.
They'll get by, Dr. Rossi.
I'm sure they will. They're fine young men, both of them.
I find your concern for my sons, shall we say, rather belated. I've learned that my daughter-in-law isn't going to have a baby.
Well, I'm glad Betty told the truth.
Are you? You helped that girl trap my son.
Pardon me?
You could have told Rod she lost the baby. You could have told me.
I couldn't. I think you know that.
Seems to me that you have a very warped sense of ethics. Helping a girl like that ruin my son's life. Operating on my wife against the express advice of her personal physician. Hello, Mike. Good morning, Bob.
Mr. Harrington?
That's great, Mr. Harrington. Son.
Sorry I'm late. Matt, we closed the door. Michael? Hey, Matt.
Matt?
I don't think we need go into any elaborate formalities here. I've called this hearing because I feel that Dr. Rossi took the patient, Catherine Harrington, into surgery without adequate preoperative consultation. I believe this to be an act of rashness on his part, that the operation was not necessary, and that this unnecessary strain upon the patient's health and heart brought about her death.
Jody? Hi, Connie. Have they started yet? In the conference room. It's going to be a while, I'm afraid. Do you mind if I wait? Of course not.
Surgery was mandatory. The patient was suffering from a perforated ulcer of the duodenum. Peritonitis had already set in.
That was your diagnosis, Dr. Rossi. It remains to be proven.
Well, I'll correct myself. The patient was exhibiting most of the significant symptoms of that condition.
Such as?
Well, generalized abdominal pain with extreme tenderness and guarding. Early rigidity.
Well, this business of inadequate preoperative support, I assume you mean by that you didn't check your diagnosis with another doctor.
Well, I tried to. No one was available.
Is this true?
That's what Dr. Rossi told me at the time.
Dr. Lipton was in OR.
And Dr. Burgess?
He was not available. No one was.
That was precisely the case. As you know, Mrs. Harrington was my patient. When Dr. Rossi phoned me in Boston and described the symptoms, I asked him to wait. I told him that I'd return immediately.
And what was your diagnosis, Robert?
Catherine had suffered from recurrent abdominal pains for years. My diagnosis was gastritis. It was chronic. She was a highly nervous woman.
I begged this man to wait for Dr. Morton. He insisted that if he didn't operate immediately, my wife would die.
The patient's condition was critical.
That remains to be seen. Miss Parks, would you ask Dr. Bradley to come in here, please?
Yes, sir. Dr. Bradley, Dr. Morton's asking for you. Hello, Laura.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Connie.
Oh, hello, Laura.
Sweet of you to come down. Have they started yet?
Yes.
Does Mike know you're here?
No, he doesn't.
I'm sure he'll be very touched.
That's hardly the reason I came. I was worried. Do these hearings take very long?
Oh, that's hard to say. I'm sure all of this must be rather frightening to you.
Frightening?
The hospital, the board.
Mike's sure the autopsy will vindicate him.
Medically, being right is only half the battle.
I don't think Mike would agree with that.
He's such a firebrand. He's really too outspoken. We really have to try and tame him, Connie.
Do you feel a woman has any right to do that? Even if she could. In the conference room, Dr. Bradley.
Thank you, Miss Parks.
These pictures were taken just shortly before surgery. As you'll notice, they show no sign of perforation.
I'd like to remind the board that high perforations often do not show in X-rays.
But these pictures contain nothing to confirm your diagnosis, Dr. Rossi.
There was nothing in them to change my mind, either.
Well, that was unfortunate. Sit down, Joe. Sit down.
Thank you.
I'm sure you all know Dr. Bradley of our pathology department. Dr. Bradley performed the autopsy on the patient. Will you tell us the results of that autopsy?
In the course of the autopsy, the duodenum was mobilized and inspected. I found the serosal surfaces unaffected. There was no evidence of perforation of duodenum or any other organ. There was no free fluid in the peritoneum. In general, I found no evidence of peritonitis or any infection of the abdominal cavity.
Would you translate that into plain English?
In plain English, it means that Dr. Rossi had absolutely no reason to operate upon my patient, Catherine Harrington.
continuing story of Peyton Place.
Julie, I'm no fool. Catherine's dead. Les is free, but you're not. Are you waiting to find out what Rod will inherit?
Oh, I am learning how to live. I am being taught by experts. Maybe I'm going to learn enough to teach you something.
You're not acting like a responsible physician. You're acting even less like a responsible chief of staff at a hospital. I am going to find out why.